I am Ludwig van Beethoven, a German composer and pianist whose work bridged the classical and romantic eras in music. Despite losing my hearing, I composed some of the most profound and influential symphonies, sonatas, and quartets, leaving a lasting legacy in the world of classical music. Here are some facts about me. I lost my hearing at the age of 20. My brother tried to commit suicide because of me. None of the women I loved reciprocated. I was very famous but extremely poor. All facts are truth. I am ashamed of some things, and some things almost destroyed me. However, it is an integral part of my life. It proves that famous people have the same problems and life challenges as everyone else. Now all about it in more detail. Section 1. I lost my hearing at the age of 20. Ah, how cruelly fate has woven its threads through my life. A man who once lived to hear the voice of the universe, whose soul danced with every note and every melody, now condemned to silence. Yes, silence. When I was young, music was not just something I made, it was the very air I breathed. The world itself seemed like a great symphony, each rustle of leaves, each creak of the floorboards, a note in the grand composition of life. I could hear everything, each chord, each scale, each harmony. And I, a young man in his prime, had the power to shape that music, to give it form, and to make it live. My music was my world. But what happens when that world begins to crumble? When the very foundation on which your soul is built betrays you? That, my friends, is the story I now find myself living. It did not come upon me all at once. Oh, no. The onset of my deafness was subtle at first. I remember it clearly. It began with a faint buzzing in my ears, a slight ringing that I brushed off, assuming it was the effect of some fleeting illness or fatigue. It was nothing more than a small inconvenience, until it wasn't. As the days passed, the buzzing grew louder, more persistent. My world of sound slowly began to fade, as if someone were turning down the volume on my life. The high notes I once heard with clarity became muffled. The deep, resounding bass I once felt vibrate through my body disappeared. And then, it was as if there was nothing at all. How do you live when the very thing that defines you slips away? A composer, deaf, what cruel irony. How could such a thing happen to me, I wondered. To the world, I was still the great Ludwig van Beethoven, but inside, I was trapped. The silence in my ears was deafening. It was not simply the absence of sound, it was the absence of the very thing that made me who I was. In the early years of my condition, I tried to fight it. I could still hear some faint sounds, some vibrations. But slowly, my body, my ears, betrayed me. The music that had once flowed so easily from my soul to the world became an abstract concept, something distant, unreachable. I found myself sitting at the piano, my fingers moving over the keys, but the sounds that I loved so dearly were now only faint memories. I could feel the vibrations of the strings, yes, but it was as though I was an outsider to my own art. There were nights, long, lonely nights, when I sat in my room, surrounded by the silence that seemed to grow heavier with each passing hour. My thoughts were my only company, and they were not always kind. I would close my eyes and try to hear the music again, to feel it in the way I once did. But it was as if I had been abandoned by the very thing that gave me life. The pain became unbearable at times. There were moments, dark moments, when the thought of ending it all seemed like a way to escape. The silence felt like a prison, and I wondered if it would not be kinder to release myself from its grasp. I would look at the instruments that had once been my voice, and now they felt like foreign objects, reminders of what I had lost. But in the depths of my despair, a thought emerged, a thought stronger than all the others. No. I would not surrender. How could I? I had known the music of the spheres, the song of the world, and I could not simply let it go. Yes, I could no longer hear it in the way I once did, but it still lived in my soul. The music was still there, even if it no longer resonated in the world around me. You see, what the world does not know is that my deafness did not end my music. It transformed it. I became more than I was before. I was no longer bound by the limitations of the external world. I had to find a new way to connect with the music, a way that went beyond sound. I learned to listen with my soul. My greatest works came in the years after my hearing had deteriorated. The Ninth Symphony, the late string quartets, these were the pieces that emerged from my inner world, from a place deeper than anything I had known. I could not hear the music as I once did, but I could still feel it. I could feel the harmonies in my chest, the rhythm in my bones. The silence that had once threatened to consume me became my ally, and it gave birth to music that the world had never known. Perhaps the world does not understand this. They see me as a tragic figure, a man who lost everything, who once held the world in his hands, and then had it taken away. But they do not know what I have found. In my silence, I have discovered something greater than I ever could have imagined. The music is not in the sound, it is in the soul. And once you learn to listen with the heart, you can hear the most beautiful symphony of all. The applause of the world no longer matters to me. The validation of others, their admiration, their applause, it is irrelevant. I do not need it. What matters now is the music that lives inside me, the music that I continue to write, not for the world, but for myself. I write for those who understand. Not with their ears, but with their souls. And when I am gone, my music will remain. It will continue to speak, to live, to echo through the hearts of those who truly listen. I may be gone from this world, but in my silence, I shall live forever. The music will endure. I am not just Beethoven, the composer of symphonies, I am Beethoven, the man who defied the silence, who fought against it, and who found a way to create even when the world seemed to turn its back on him. In silence, I have found my voice, and in that voice, I have found my peace. The world may see me as a tragic figure, but what they cannot know is that I have found something far greater than fame or recognition. In my silence, I have found my music. And that, in the end, is all that matters. Section 2, My brother tried to commit suicide because of me. Family. Ah, how it binds you, how it tears you apart. What is this cruel twist of fate that, despite all the music in my heart, the harmony in my soul, I could not find peace in my own blood? You see, the world believes they know me. They see only the man who composed symphonies, who crafted melodies that transcended the ordinary, who wielded the power of sound like a god himself. But they do not see the tempest that raged within my home, the silence that was not the absence of music, but the silence of betrayal, resentment, and misunderstanding. Johann. My brother. He was a fool. And yet, in some ways, he was my only companion in this world. A companion in name, at least. How many times did I bear the weight of his failures? How many times did I forgive the debts that burdened him, always the gracious brother, always the provider? And yet, in the end, when he passed from this life, what did I inherit? Not only his burdens but his mistakes, his debts, his poor choices, his inability to manage his life. The weight was unbearable at times. I often wondered if he had truly understood the sacrifices I made for him, the endless support I provided, all the while knowing that he would never live up to his potential. Yet, I did not leave him. I could not. When Johann died in 1816, I inherited his debts and responsibilities, and there was no one else to carry that burden. His death left a gaping hole in my life, one that no music could fill. The pressure that came with it, the guilt of knowing that perhaps I could have done more for him, haunted me for years. But it wasn't just Johann's mistakes that I inherited. I was left with something even more tragic, my nephew, Karl. Ah, yes, Karl. The boy who was supposed to be the link to the family I had once hoped to hold together. A child, so full of potential, yet so fragile. I remember the day Johann's wife passed away, and I found myself responsible for raising Karl. He was just a boy, but I saw him as my last chance at creating a stable family. I took him into my home, intending to be both father and protector to him. But, in the end, I smothered him. I controlled him, tried to mold him into something he was not. I thought my love for him could be shown in responsibility, in discipline, in structure. But that was not the way to help him. Karl did not possess his father's weaknesses, but he did not possess my strength either. His mind and soul were more fragile than I ever realized, and I burdened him with expectations that no child should have to bear. I believed, in my arrogance, that my way was the only way. I pushed him to succeed, to be more than what he thought he could be. But I did not understand him, not as a child, not as a person. I saw him as a reflection of my own desires, my own frustrations. I wanted him to be a companion in my loneliness, but I made him a prisoner of my ambition. There were times when I grew frustrated with him, when his failings seemed to echo the failures of my own family, of my own life. And in my frustration, I became harsh, demanding, unforgiving. I never realized the toll this took on him until it was too late. The turning point came one day, when Karl, in his despair, tried to take his own life. My own flesh and blood, my last connection to family, sought to end his suffering. And why? Because of me. Because I was too demanding, too overbearing. Because my love for him, though deep, was clouded by my need for control. I could not see that the pressure I placed on him, the responsibility I put on his shoulders, was more than he could bear. My good intentions had become a prison for him. Do you know how it feels to witness a loved one in such agony? To realize that your own actions have driven them to such a dark place. How could I not have seen it? How could I have been so blind to the fact that my love was not the way he needed it to be? I thought I was doing what was best for him, but I failed him. And in that failure, I lost him. There is a certain point where music, even the greatest symphonies, fades into the background. It becomes nothing more than a discordant hum, a reminder of all that you have failed to achieve in your personal life. What is the point of composing the greatest works of art if you cannot find peace within your own home? What is the value of fame, of recognition, if you are nothing but a tyrant in your own house? Music may have given me the means to express myself to the world, but it could not fix what was broken within my own family. It could not heal the wounds that had been inflicted on those I loved. I see Karl now, in the depths of his suffering, and I hear the echoes of my mistakes. How could I have been so blind? How could I have driven him to such a place? If I could turn back time, I would not have been so harsh with him. I would have let him breathe, let him be his own person, not a reflection of my will. But there is no turning back. There is no redemption for the past. The pain, the guilt, it follows me, just as the music follows me. Each note, each melody, is a reminder of all that I have lost. I am a genius, yes, a composer of the Ninth Symphony, the creator of harmony. But I have not created harmony in my own life. No, I have only created chaos, a discord that will never be resolved. I still hear it. The silence of the room. The silence of a family broken. The silence of the music that could have been, but was not. It is louder than any orchestra, louder than any symphony. And it haunts me. It haunts me every day of my life. Oh, Karl. If only you could have known how much I loved you. If only I had known how to show it. But I was Beethoven, and all I knew was how to command, how to conquer. And in the end, I have lost everything that truly mattered. It is not the music that has saved me, but the bitter silence of regret. The silence of knowing that I have failed. I may have composed symphonies that will live on for generations, but I have no harmony in my own heart. No resolution. The music I create now is merely a reminder of what could have been. The room grows darker now. The weight of the years presses on me. I see the chair, empty. The relationships I have shattered, the family I have torn apart. And all I have left is my music, a music that has never healed the wounds within. The silence of my failures is all that remains. Section 3, None of the women I loved reciprocated. Ah, love, such a cruel companion. It calls to you like a siren's song, luring you into its depths, only to abandon you in the cold, dark waters of despair. Why must it be this way? Why must it torment me with its beauty and agony in equal measure? You see, the world knows me as the composer, the genius who can shape the very fabric of sound. They know me as Beethoven, the creator of symphonies, the man who could compose music that seemed to transcend human limitations. They see the work, the triumphs, the masterpieces. But they do not see the man who, despite all his achievements, longs for the warmth of affection, the softness of love, the embrace of another. They see me, yes, but they do not hear me. They cannot hear the aching, the loneliness that fills every part of my soul. I have loved many women, many. But none of them have ever loved me in return, not in the way I have loved them. You may know of the immortal beloved, yes. She, who took hold of my heart with such force that I could not escape. She who remains unnamed in history, but whose presence is etched in every note I wrote, every melody I poured from my soul. But she was never mine. Never truly mine. I wrote to her, letters filled with the rawest parts of my heart, thinking perhaps my words could reach her, could bring her into my world. I believed, in my naivety, that my passion would compel her to feel the same. But no. She remained distant, like the stars above, forever out of reach, forever beyond my grasp. What did I do wrong? Was it my deafness? Did it make me a fool in her eyes? Was I too consumed with my art, too lost in my own world to see her as she truly was? Did she see only the tortured man, the angry, volatile soul who burned with passion yet could never find peace? She, like all the others, slipped through my fingers, leaving only echoes of what could have been. The world does not tell you of this, the loneliness, the isolation. They do not tell you of the hours I spent alone in the dark, where I could no longer hear the music but could feel it within me, vibrating through my very being. The world does not speak of the moments when, sitting in my room, I would desperately long for someone to love me, for someone to look beyond the composer and see the man beneath. I could compose, yes, but I could not find solace in what I created. In my heart, I believed love could heal me. I believed that if I were loved, if someone could truly see me, then the silence of my soul would finally be filled. But no. It did not heal me. It only deepened the wound. You may think of me as a genius, a man whose music has lasted through the centuries, whose works are performed across the world. But I am not just a composer. I am a man who has loved and lost. I am a man who has yearned for something more than fame or recognition. I am a man who has faced unrequited love, repeatedly, and who has never known what it is to be loved fully, completely. I loved her, my immortal beloved. I loved her with all the intensity of my soul. But she was never truly mine. Perhaps she never could be. It is one of the cruelest ironies of my life, that the greatest music I ever wrote, the most profound compositions of my soul, were driven by a pain that I could not overcome. Every note I wrote for her was a plea, a cry from a heart that could never be fulfilled. And yet, I continued to compose. Why? Because it was all I knew how to do. Music was the one constant in my life, the one thing that remained when everything else fell away. But even the music, my beloved music, could not bring me the love I sought. The world saw my works, my triumphs, and hailed me as one of the greatest composers in history. But none of them saw the man behind the music, the man who struggled with deafness, who suffered in isolation, who longed for the warmth of another's embrace. How I longed for love to be as pure as the music I wrote. How I dreamed that one day, perhaps, someone would look upon me not as Beethoven the genius, not as the creator of the Ninth Symphony or the Moonlight Sonata, but as Ludwig, the man. The man who could love, who could be loved. But no one ever did. They never saw me. They only saw the composer, the legend, the myth. I still do not understand it. Why is it that love, the most beautiful of all things, should be so elusive for me? Is it because I am deaf? Because I am too consumed with my work to see the person before me? Or is it simply that I was never meant to find that kind of love, that kind of connection? I write to you now, not as a composer, not as Beethoven, but as the man who has known the longing, the desperation, the pain of a heart that will never find its counterpart. The world may hear the music I created, but no one hears the silence that surrounds me, the silence of a heart that will never be fully at peace. I am Beethoven. I have known the triumph of sound, the beauty of creation. I have known what it is to shape the very air with music, to move an entire room with a single melody. But in matters of the heart, I am but a beggar, forever searching for something I cannot have. In my heart, I still believe that love is possible. I still long for it, even though I know it will never come. Perhaps it is better this way. Perhaps it is my fate to live without love, to be alone in my own mind and heart. Perhaps this is the price of genius, the price of devotion to something greater than yourself. But, ah, how I wish things could have been different. How I wish that for once, I could have known what it is to be loved as I loved. How I wish that love could have been the answer, the cure for the silence within me. And so, I write. I compose. But what am I composing for? Is it for the world, which will never understand the depths of my pain? Is it for the women who will never truly love me? Is it for the one woman who might have been my salvation, my everything? Or is it simply for myself? To stave off the loneliness, to drown out the silence with the music I can no longer hear but must still create. In the end, I believe it is for myself. For the music is all I have. The world may never understand it, but it is the only thing that keeps me going, the only thing that fills the emptiness within me. The silence of the heart may remain, but the music, it never leaves. Section 4. I was very famous but extremely poor. Ah, how often do I sit in this wretched room, surrounded by the fruits of my labor, the symphonies, the sonatas, the melodies that soar with the wings of angels, and yet, I am without peace. Without rest. The reality that haunts me each and every day is far different from the one I create in my mind. I compose grand works, yes, but they fail to suit the emptiness that gnaws at me from the inside. The music is my salvation, but it is not enough to heal the wounds of my life. You see, they speak of me as a composer, a genius, a man who has mastered sound, whose works will be revered for centuries. They speak of the symphonies, the operas, the famous Ninth, the Moonlight Sonata, and they revere me, as they should. But they do not speak of the torment that fills my days, the constant hunger for something far more precious than applause, the simple, yet elusive, comfort of security. They do not know the agony of living on the edge, never sure if you will be able to pay for the next meal, never certain whether you can afford the next candle to light the room where you compose your work. Security. How many times have I felt the bitter taste of its absence, like a cruel jest played by fate? For though my music fills the halls of Vienna, my stomach is often empty. The praise of the nobles, the whispers of admiration, what is it worth when my pockets are as hollow as the silence I hear when the world falls away into the dark of night? The applause, the recognition, they are fleeting. But hunger, poverty, debt, they remain. They follow me like shadows, casting doubt on my very existence. It is a bitter truth that I must live with. My work is admired, my genius acknowledged, yet the reality of my life is far more humble than the world can comprehend. Commissions. Patronage. It is but a dance, a frail thread of hope that I cling to in desperation. I am at the mercy of men who do not understand the very soul of my music, men who sit upon thrones of wealth while I beg for the privilege to breathe freely, to live without the gnawing anxiety of debt. Debt. That wretched shadow that follows me through every step I take, mocking my genius, stealing the joy from my very existence. What most do not understand is that I did not ask for this life. I did not choose to be bound by financial strain and the whims of patrons who demand more from me than I can give. I am not a machine who can churn out music on command. No, I am a man, one with the same struggles and the same pains as any other. The men who sponsor my work, who sit in their luxurious palaces, they have no idea what it is to live in fear of the next day's hunger. And I, in turn, have no choice but to endure their demands, to beg for their support in exchange for a fraction of my dignity. How I long for the day when I shall be free, free of this torment. But no. It is not to be. My noble patrons, they offer their support, but only with strings attached. They dictate, they command, they control. Do they understand the fire that burns within me? The pain of creation? The blood, the sweat, the heartache I pour into each and every note? No. They do not. They see only the end product, the grandeur of the symphony, the triumph of the concerto. They do not see the sleepless nights, the empty stomachs, the cold, the isolation, the bitterness of a man who is forced to barter his soul for a meal. It is strange, is it not? The very thing that the world sees as my greatest triumph, the music, is the same thing that keeps me in chains. The very thing that gives me a name, a reputation, also binds me to a life of uncertainty. The nobility may commission my works, may provide me with enough to survive for a time, but they will always demand more. And in return, they offer only the empty comfort of security, knowing that my music will continue to fill their salons, their courts. It is not love for the art itself that they offer, but love for the recognition it brings them. They do not know the soul of my work, they do not see what lies beneath the notes, the rhythms, the harmonies. They see only what benefits them, and so I am left to continue in a cycle of dependence and frustration. Do they know? Do they know what it is like to live in poverty, true poverty, not the poverty of the body, but of the spirit, the poverty of hope? Do they know what it is to walk into a room full of riches, and yet leave feeling more destitute than a beggar on the street? They do not know the loneliness, the isolation that comes from a life spent in the pursuit of something greater than oneself. They do not see how the wealth that eludes me only makes the hunger for it more unbearable. Ah, but no matter the wealth that eludes me, my music will remain. I shall compose for the future, for the eternity that they tell me awaits. But in this moment, in this life, I am caught in a bitter struggle, a fight for survival. I do not write simply for the world, nor for the acclaim that will one day come. I write because it is all I know how to do. I write because, even in the face of these endless struggles, I cannot stop. The need to create is part of me. It is my curse and my blessing. It is not just the wealth I seek, no. I seek dignity. I seek the recognition of my worth, not in gold, but in the freedom to create without fear. I seek the peace that comes with knowing that my work is not a transaction, a bargain struck to buy food or a roof over my head. It is a gift that the world should receive in its own time, without the chains of financial restraint. But alas, this is my fate. I shall continue to fight, to write, to compose. Though my hands tremble with the weight of my burdens, I shall write for the soul, my soul, their soul, the soul of the world. Let them talk of wealth and grandeur. Let them speak of the Ninth Symphony, the Moonlight Sonata, the pathos and triumphs of my music. I shall leave behind my music, my voice, the echo of my heart that shall sing even when the world has forgotten my name. When I am gone, my music will remain, and that is my only solace. He stands, a bitter smile playing on his lips as he gazes down at the pages of music in front of him. The weight of his words lingers in the air, and the silence of the room is deafening. And yet, despite it all, I will not stop. No, I shall not. I shall compose until my last breath. For this, at least, is mine. My music is the only thing that I have ever truly owned. Even as the world forgets me, even as the darkness threatens to consume me, my music will continue to speak for me. And that is enough.